Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of the world, we're here and we're doing it. We're ranking every single Spider-Man adaptation there ever was, there ever will be. Well, that's not true. They're going to make more. But all of them that have come out to this point, we're ranking them. We're putting them on a tier list. We're going to determine what is the most accurate Spider-Man adaptation to ever come out. That's the goal here today, people. It's your boy Spider-Thumb. Got my Hokage outfit and everything. We're ready to do this, all right? So, but before we get into this, we just got to lay the ground rules real quick. Remember, this is not based on how I feel. I'm not trying to say, like, Spider-Man Friend or Foe is my favorite, so it's the most accurate. That is not the goal of the video here. That is not the point. What we're doing here is we're going to compare and contrast it to the comics to try and figure out what is truly the most accurate Spider-Man adaptation to ever exist. That is what we're doing right now, okay? If you want to know the best adaptations on a personal opinion, maybe I'll make a video like that in the future. But this is supposed to try and be as objective as possible, okay, people? We are trying to make sure we're keeping our biases out of the equation, all right? Cool? Everybody got that? All right, let's start it off. The tier list is already set forth for me. I do believe every single adaptation's on here. I've gone through it. I'm not going to lie. A lot of the covers look different from the actual titles. Like, this is very clearly Spider-Man 1 and or 2, right? But for some reason on the top it says Destiny. I don't know why. When we get to it, we're going to rank it as if it's Spider-Man 1, and we'll go from there. But, yeah. Let's start from the very first top. We got Enter Electro, which is technically Spider-Man 2 for the PlayStation 1. Personally, I don't think it's the greatest adaptation. I'm going to put it in C. Our very first adaptation we're going to have on this list at all is going to be in C. Now, for the most part, these are adapting. We're going to talk about 616 Comics, but if it does go to 1610, we will talk about that as well, and we'll give points for that. Just because something's not accurate to a 616, but it's accurate to 1610, that's points. That's still a comic book, people. That's probably what it's based off of. Okay? But to talk about Enter Electro a little bit, we all know Electro, right? He's been around for 60 years. You think he first appeared in Amazing Spider-Man number 9 off the dome? You know, I'm just trying to... I think it's Amazing Spider-Man 9 or 8, one of those two. And, he was never really that big of a threat, honestly. Even when he is a really big threat, he's just too stupid to use it. So, like, for them to make an entire game about Electro being the big bad and becoming, like, supercharged and running the evil, just doesn't feel right, doesn't feel appropriate. I did still like Spider-Man's performance in the game. You get to see the Doc Ock and everything. But overall, I would not say Enter Electro Spider-Man is really that accurate. I mean, I guess more so just because I'm focusing on the fact that the game is centered around Electro, you know, and Electro's never the big bad. Realistically, it probably could be in B based on other characters, like representations and how they're shown. Spider-Man's freaking phenomenal in the game, so I'll probably move it up to B, actually. But with this Ultimate Spider-Man the video game, has everybody, if you haven't played this video game, I'm going to let you know right now, you are missing out big time on what could possibly be the greatest Spider-Man game ever created. I know a lot of people like Marvel Spider-Man, and Marvel Spider-Man 2 followed it up in terms of gameplay, being mad fun. But this game, if the cell shading and everything feels like a comic book. The storyline is ripped from the comic books. And the voice acting is incredible. The fighting is great. The city, it was one of the first games where you get to openly explore the city besides Spider-Man 2. So for the time, that was also incredible. But as an accuracy standpoint, it's pretty freaking good, people. I'm going straight to S tier with it. It adapts 1610, it does not adapt 616, so it's a totally different storyline from the original 60 stories all the way up to 2024. We're still going with it, baby. We're holding on strong for 616. Even if recently it's been kind of bad for Spider-Man, 616 is still going. But 1610, it had its time and it ended. The Ultimate Spider-Man game, in my knowledge, I think it's based on the first 50 issues or so, because Venom shows up. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it came out right before Venom appears. So, in itself, it's honestly... didn't get the chance to know how Venom was going to be when it was trying to adapt Venom into its own video game, right? But I would go as far as to say that it's a better representation of Venom. It reminds people more of the evil 616 Venom rather than the actual Ultimate Venom. He looks exactly like the Ultimate Venom, which is great. It's so perfect. But the Ultimate Venom up until this point, like I said, he wasn't really a thing yet, so they didn't have much to base it on. And he would become abhorrent, you know? He's actually a pedo, and I'm glad I didn't have to play as a pedophile in a video game, because half the game you spend playing as Venom. So that was pretty neat. Glad that they did that for me. And you can't even blame them for not being accurate, because that wasn't even a thing at the time, if I'm not mistaken. So for me, this is an easy S tier. This is going to be the number 1 game as of right now. It's the number 1 adaptation as of right now. I don't know if it's going to be the number 1 adaptation when we're completely done. We got a lot of banger adaptations down here. But we're going to move on to the next one, and it's a Spider-Man friend or foe. It's got to go D. I may end up having to make another tier for something worse than this, but I don't think Spider-Man friend or foe is lower than D. I would just put it in D. The reason for that is they're all working with Spider-Man to stop an alien invasion, essentially, stuff like that. It's kind of weird. It's kind of kooky. It's a fun game, you know. You get to play with your friends, couch co-op, you know, with the homies, the boys, the squad. Who can forget that or hate on that? That's what we all love. But in terms of an adaptation, you got, like, Venom as a good guy working with Spider-Man. You're like, oh, that's fire. Everybody loves that. But then it's like, so is Green Goblin. So is Doc Ock. So is Carnage. Carnage is working with Spider-Man, excuse me? That would never happen. I feel like Carnage would just go crazy. He would try and kill Spider-Man and the aliens at the same time, you know? They even, I think, have the new Goblin in this game, which is just not even a character. He's definitely solely based off the movies. And the suit that they use for the game is also Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man suit, essentially, without the silver emblem. That's not going to give you any points either, because that's not comic accurate. The game is fun, and it's, like I said, it's a good couch co-op game, but it's not the most accurate. Right here, we have the Amazing Spider-Man video game. Now, I'm a little torn if I'm going to rank the movie games. I don't think I'm going to. As of now, I'm just going to leave them to the side. Maybe at the end we can come back to it. But as of now, I don't really see the point, because this is just trying to adapt the movie. Like, that was the whole point of the Amazing Spider-Man video game, right? And same thing with the Spider-Man video games, the original ones, too. They were trying to adapt the movie. Yeah, they have a little bit more. Like, I know Spider-Man 3 features Morbius. Morbius and stuff. And, like, Mysterio's in Spider-Man 2. But, like, it's just hard because it's adapting two different source materials at the same time. So for now, let's move on, and we'll probably come back to them. But we're going to start, it's that Spider-Man Edge of Time. That is Spider-Man, where are you? Shattered Dimensions sequel. Now, I love the way they portray Peter Parker, and I even personally love the way they portray Miguel. I don't see how I cannot put this in A tier at the very least, personally. When you're looking at it, Spider-Man is portrayed very well. I know I've probably gotten into some arguments with some people online. My dog, SK, we've talked about this a fair bit. SK, he's my boy. Nobody say any flame to him. This is his opinion. He's allowed to have his own opinions as well as I am. And we both agree to disagree. So, you know, like mature grown-ups. So please don't get involved with it. We and him are homies. But he has a big issue with how the story is written in terms of time travel. And like a lot of this stuff really shouldn't be happening. And they shouldn't really be worried about it, which is a totally fair way to view the story, because he's right. 100% he's objectively correct in how the story works. And, like, Peter's, like, freaking out about stuff that truly wouldn't matter if they just got the job done in the first place. You know what I'm saying? Like, the whole reset would have happened and MJ wouldn't have died, like Peter's big speech where he's claiming that his life wouldn't matter without MJ.
You can't just ignore that she's in danger.
Hey, I'm trying to focus on what's important.
What's important is not standing by and allowing someone to suffer or die because you do nothing. If you don't get that, then you don't get the first thing about being Spider-Man.
You're the one who doesn't get it, Parker. The future depends on...
My future is meaningless without her.
However, that scene does feel just like Peter Parker, right? He does, even if MJ were to die and then come back after the rewipe, I still think that's an accurate thing Peter Parker would not want his significant other to go through. Even if she doesn't remember it, like, he's still going to have her die. She's going to be afraid and terrified in that moment, and I can understand why he wouldn't want her to do it and have to die. That's pretty scary. Pretty scary if you ask me. So I think Miguel is portrayed very well. The story's written by Peter David, which is the original writer for Spider-Man 2099. Like, it's hard for me not to put it in A tier when it has so much relation to what I feel like would be a comic-accurate Spider-Man Peter Parker, a comic-accurate Miguel O'Hara as Spider-Man 2099, on top of the fact that Peter David even wrote it. The villain of the entire game is Peter Parker as the final villain in the future Spider-Man 2099 universe, and this is actually exactly what Peter David wanted to do with the Spider-Man 2099 universe. So it's pretty cool that he actually even got to do his own vision for what he originally had planned out for the 2099 universe as well. I'm personally a big fan. I'm not going to put it any lower than A tier. I could even see it in S tier, but for now, I'm going to put it in A tier. Okay. What do we have here? Mysterio's Menace for the Nintendo. I think this was for the Game Boy. Way back in the day, the Game Boy Advance. It's a pretty fun game, actually. I hope they have the other one where you're fighting like a Hammerhead a lot, unless this is the game that I'm thinking of. But I enjoyed it. I played it as a kid. I'm old. I'm not gonna lie. I had a Game Boy Advance and a Game Boy Color. I even have a Sega Genesis, so I've really played all of these things unintentionally trying to make this list. I've already played this stuff, which is pretty cool. The game's really fun. You follow Spider-Man around. It's a side scroller, if I'm not mistaken. On top of all the stuff that you get to do, you find a lot of iconic villains. It is on the Game Boy Color or / Advance, though, if I'm not mistaken. Let me double check that. Spider-Man, Mysterio. Is it called? I thought it was called. It's called Mysterio's Menace. Yep, this is the exact game I'm talking about. Yep, this is the exact game I'm talking about. Look, side scroller, exactly what I was saying. Game Boy Advance, pretty cool. You got a lot of cool villains. You could even see real quick big wheels even in this freaking game. I like the different suits. It's just, if you've played the Game Boy Color, you would know that this game system did not have a lot of capabilities. It was not that strong. It was not that powerful. So you weren't able to do a lot of what you wanted to do. So it's hard for me to say that this is a great adaptation when there's not really much characterization other than gameplay-wise, and it's a side-scroller. I'm going to give it a B. Nothing offensive in there. I personally loved it. I grew up on the game. But I can't see it being higher than that without actually giving some more characterization to the character. All right, moving on. Again, we're skipping the movie games down here, and we're going to go straight to Spider-Man 3. Okay. Spider-Man 3 is a D-tier adaptation. I'm being real with y'all, okay? Now, we could look at Sandman. It's pretty good adaptation of Sandman through and through. Or should I say, if you skip the very beginning of Sandman and then go through and through. He's a very redeemable villain. He didn't really want to do anything bad to anybody. He cares. That's Sandman from the comics, and it's fire. But Sandman didn't kill Uncle Ben. That's not his thing. Never was his thing. It didn't actually happen. So that already alone, you're going to lose points for that. The new Goblin's a big thing in this movie. The new Goblin doesn't actually exist. Harry should have just been another Green Goblin. That's pretty damn accurate, and people would have loved to see a Harry Green Goblin in live action. Not going to give you points for that. Venom is in this movie. Venom is a big hater like he was originally. I love that. The church scene was pretty great. I love that as well. But Venom just doesn't feel like Venom until you can complete his story. Is it a solid evil Venom? Yeah, he doesn't really look like Venom. He's not big enough. He's not tall enough or strong enough. But he's a bad guy, and he's trying to mess with Peter Parker left and right. So I can totally get where you're coming from on that at front. Venom's probably the least of your worries in terms of an adaptation. Gwen Stacy, also terrible. So, like, when you have multiple characters in the movie as terrible adaptations, it's hard for me to give this anything above a D. It's getting a D grade. Like, Gwen Stacy shows up after MJ, which is not a thing in the comics. We all know she comes first, and then high school or whatever. I think it's university. And then they date, and then obviously she dies. Green Goblin kills her. I think that's Amazing Spider-Man 112. And then MJ becomes a big thing, or in Black Cat a little bit. You know, they have a little thing. But either way, Gwen Stacy's supposed to come before all the other love interests, essentially, besides maybe Betty Brant and Liz Allen for like a fling, if you want to give him that. So her coming that late, not even having a thing with Peter other than him cheating, which is something Peter Parker also shouldn't be doing when he cheats on her and kisses her in front of everybody. Just no way I'm going to be able to give this game anything above a D. There's just none. The Black Suit arc, also not accurate to the comics if we're going to be real. The Battle World is where he gets the symbiote from, not while he's riding around with MJ on the back of a motor scooter. That's not what happened. What happened was he came from Battle World, and when he brought back the Lizard, he still had the black suit. He got it out of a machine after the suit got ripped. So, Spider-Man 3, you are the bottom of the tier list currently. I'm sorry. I'm just going to be 100% real with you. You're not that good. That's an adaptation. Or as a movie overall. Anyways, moving on. We had the 60s Spider-Man show. Now, I just made an entire breakdown on this show. I couldn't believe just how damn accurate it was. It is stupendous as an adaptation. I'm talking about many different times in the adaptation, it's directly pulled from the comics, whether it be a scene, the dialogue, everything about it just feels like the comics. There's some Toon Force moments, which is why I'm not going to give it S tier number 1, because it's definitely not going to be above Ultimate Spider-Man at this point, or a few other things I have in mind. But there's definitely so much good to talk about with this stuff. The way Mysterio is portrayed. Mysterio is probably the best portrayal of Mysterio in anything we've ever gotten. And he's pretty good in a lot of stuff, but he looks accurate as hell in the 60s Spider-Man show. J. Jonah Jameson is peak classic J. Jonah Jameson. What else we got? Doc Ock feels just like Doc Ock. Green Goblin, pretty similar to Green Goblin. He's even shooting lasers out of his hands. What else we got? Salmon, pretty accurate to Salmon. He's just as ludicrous as he was back in the day. You know, all this stuff, it makes sense. It feels right. So it's hard for me not to put it in S tier. Maybe it goes to the top of A tier. I could see it being here too because, like I said, the Toon Force stuff is a bit goofy. But also in the same aspect, no other game until Shattered Dimensions is actually going to give him the web constructs, which is something he actually had in the comics. So him having web constructs and being mad goofy kind of was real for a bit, you know. It was pretty on brand for the 60s comics a lot of the time. So I'm going to put it in S tier. It's phenomenal. And if you haven't seen it, I strongly recommend you do. It's funny as hell as well. The only big flaw, I'm going to put it in A tier, is because there's really no Peter Parker until season 2. But then that origin story is so good, you got to put it back in S tier. It's going to stay in S tier for now. Okay, we're leaving it there. Cool. We're on the same page. Cool. Okay. We are moving on to what is called Destiny. In my eyes, it's the first ever Spider-Man live-action movie. Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. This one's tough. This one's tough. I gotta go with A. I'm gonna put it in A. And I know a lot of people has got their things to say, so let me get my piece out before y'all get your piece out. Y'all run to the little comment section, do your little comments like, he's too nerdy, or like, why is Norman Osborn not nearly evil enough until he gets the Goblin Serum? So like stuff like that is probably going to be brought up in the comment section. So let me talk about why I think it's great. First off, the movie opens up with them saying this story is all about a girl, Mary Jane.
But let me assure you, this, like any story worth telling, is all about a girl. That girl. The girl next door. Mary Jane Watson.
Boom. That alone, perfect. Because it really is all about MJ and Peter Parker's eyes. Yes, Gwen didn't come yet, but this is also like the very end of high school, so like, I'm gonna give it a pass. He's joining university shortly. So the no Gwen thing is a little bit jarring. It's definitely not gonna get it an S tier. But it's definitely not going to get it put down too little when they really actually do what Spider-Man comics were doing, which was making everything about MJ. Peter Parker is literally is a nerd. He's a great nerd. A lot of people like to hate on the adaptation and say he's too nerdy, and I'm not going to go out of my way and say he's not too nerdy, because he's a little bit too nerdy. He should have been a bit fiery, a little more of a jerk. Peter Parker's a bit of a jerk when he's in high school, if you didn't know. So I would have liked that. But in the same aspect, he's definitely still a nerd. That's definitely not something that's not going to change, so I don't mind it. When you rewatch this movie too, a big gripe I thought I had at least, was I didn't think he was funny enough and had enough quips. And although I do think he could have had more quips and he could have been funnier, he definitely still had quips. He had way more than I remember, like shh, mom and dad are talking when he's talking to J. Jonah Jameson. I remember that off the top of my head. That's a pretty good one.
I knew you two were in this together.
Hey, kiddo, let mom and dad talk for a minute, will you?
He has one with Doc Ock, I think, also in the next movie, but we're focused on the first one. What else we got? His relationship with Harry Osborn, like him, Harry Osborn, and MJ have like this big drama triangle, and that is definitely accurate to the comics. Yeah, they weren't cheating on each other 24/7, but they definitely had a lot of drama between them. That's for sure. I'm going to leave it in A tier as of now. I definitely think A tier is a good spot for it at this point. And we're going to move on to Spider-Man 2, people. And I'm going to put Spider-Man 2 right next to it in A tier. The story feels like a direct continuation. It doesn't do a lot of the missteps like I think Spider-Man 3 does. Doc Ock shows up. Doesn't have the most accurate origin. I'm going to move down to B. Because Doc Ock, honestly, is kind of a bad guy. In the comics, I'm actually going to move it below these guys, so... In the comics, he's just not a good guy. The explosion that goes off and fuses the tentacles to his back doesn't actually turn him evil. And I've had this discussion with many people online, especially recently. If you follow my Twitter, you've seen it. But Doc Ock in this movie was made evil because of the AI robot. And now, if you think I'm reading this movie poorly, I want you to pull up exact timestamps and show me exactly how I'm reading it wrong. Because for me personally, I don't understand how people get to this notion that Doc Ock was evil before he even took or had the AI invade his mind. Ready? Before that happens, he admits his wife is smarter than him. His wife was a poetry major in college, and he's out here, the physicist leading expert in the entire world, and he's openly stating he believes his wife is smarter than him. So I don't know why people are saying he's super cocky and has a lot of hubris, because like he's openly stating as somebody who does literature work is smarter than him. Which I'm not trying to say that she isn't smarter than him, but usually people who think that they're the smartest in the room think that somebody who's studying literature isn't even comparable to their intelligence. So I think that's a very big point we have to make. Secondly, a lot of people like to bring up the fact that Peter Parker was telling him that the equations might be a little bit wrong. You know, you might be doing it wrong. You don't have the best equations up here. You're going to get somebody hurt if it doesn't go right. And Doc Ock doesn't listen to him. So people think that's a good reason to say that Doc Ock was evil and pompous and what's the word I'm looking for? Didn't want to listen to others' opinions, just felt like he was always right. But I disagree with that notion too. At this point, Peter Parker is a freshman in college, maybe at most sophomore in college. He hardly showed up to any of his work, and we know that Doc Ock is friends with Peter's professor, who told Doc Ock that Peter is lazy. So why would Doc Ock believe that Peter should be the one telling him, the leading physicist expert in the entire world, how something's going to work? I personally wouldn't listen to him either. He's just a kid who can't even show up to class on time. Why am I listening to him? So I think overall, when people like to give you these like examples, they're just wrong. The last example you'll hear is that he didn't want to turn off the machine when he was told by Peter that the machine is going to go awry. And even then, I don't agree with. Let's say you know what the machine was for? Let's look at that. The machine was for world energy, so that people wouldn't have to pay for energy ever again. Essentially, saving the world. Now, the machine's going a little awry, and someone's like, shut it off. No. Actually, I think I'm trying to save the world here. I'm going to continue going at it. So when people try and say that he's being pompous when he's like trying to tell people he doesn't need to shut it off, it's because he's the leading expert in this stuff. He thinks it's going to stabilize. He states it for us. The final thing people will bring up, I believe, is when he's in the warehouse. He says that he couldn't be wrong.
No. Peter was right. I miscalculated. I couldn't have miscalculated.
This is directly after he says that the AI has invaded his mind. Like it's something that happens on screen for us to our very face. I don't understand how people can say that afterwards when he's like, I couldn't be wrong. They don't see it as the AI because it is 100% the AI. The AI is telling him he can't be wrong. That's exactly what I believe Remy was trying to show. Again, if I have a bad read on this and you guys disagree with me, you got to let me know and give me exact timestamps because I just don't agree. Overall, I'm going to put the movie in B tier as an adaptation, keeping Spider-Man 1 as the best in the trilogy as an adaptation. We're working our way through it. We got the Amazing Spider-Mans. I'm going to go with the Amazing Spider-Man 1 first. Okay, so the Lizard is not a good Lizard. Gwen Stacy is not the greatest Gwen Stacy either. When you look at freaking what's-his-face, Captain Stacy, also a bad adaptation. Aunt May, I think, is perfect. I think Uncle Ben is even better than the original. I don't know about that. It's close. And I think Andrew Garfield is the perfect Spider-Man as an adaptation. I don't understand when people say he's too pretty. Spider-Man is hot as fuck. Spider-Man gets bitches all the time. How are you going to tell me this man is too pretty? Spider-Man and Peter Parker, handsome-ass dude. He's married to a supermodel at one point. And when I say at one point, I'm just going to say he's married to a supermodel because MJ should still be married to Peter. So I'm going to put this in C. I don't think the Lizard has done well. He doesn't have the traumatic stuff that he's supposed to have. He doesn't even have a family. You know, that stuff really matters. He's supposed to have a family. They did do the arm thing, and they did take over the city with the Lizard thing kind of well, so I'll give them that. But outside of that, I don't know if there's anything in here that would lead me to believe that it should be above C tier. So it's going to stay right there where, in my opinion, it belongs, in C tier. And we're going to move on to the next, Andrew Garfield, The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Okay, the Green Goblin in this movie is horrible, and he doesn't even appear as Norman Osborn first, so you're going to start in D off that alone. Gwen Stacy is still not like Gwen Stacy. Even if I loved her, she's way too heroic. That's not Gwen Stacy. I'm sorry. If you've read the comics, she's kind of ass. So, Peter's still great. Would be willing to put him in C tier off that alone. Electro is based on the Ultimate Universe, and he looks like it too. He doesn't look bad, but he just feels a little too dorky. Top of D tier. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is going to be in the top of D tier for me. The suit moves it up to the bottom of C tier. That suit is just the perfect suit we've had in live action. If you want to point to No Way Home's final swimsuit, I'm going to tell you to wait till the next movie comes out when they change it, because we didn't get enough time with it, and we all know they're going to change it. So right now, this is, in my opinion, the best movie or live action suit we ever had, with the best Peter Parker we ever had. I'm putting it in the bottom of C tier. Can't stop me. Next up, we got Web of Shadows. Peter Parker in this, kind of a bitch.
MJ, I'm so worried.
Damn it!
You best play it cool, man.
Is it really you this time?
Come on, we gotta go.
Look, I promise, I won't use it again.
Black Cat's kind of too evil. MJ feels pretty good. I like Luke Cage and Wolverine and Moon Knight. Those were great. But they're not in it enough for me to give them enough points, right? The problem is, in my opinion, is Venom is very big on this whole take over the world thing, trying to infect the world with symbiotes. It's not his thing. When that happened in the comics, he fought for the world. He did not want the world infected with symbiotes. And then in Venom movie, too, I'm going to give them credit. Even in the Venom movie, they didn't have that. It's not even on this adaptation ranking list. It's not the end of the world to me. I don't need it on there because it's not really a Spider-Man. But it's true. Venom does not want an invasion of Earth. He sees Earth as his place, and he wants to protect it. He's a protector now. I'm not sure if y'all remember that. So with all that being said, I have no choice but to put it at the bottom of D. I also just can't stand the Black Cat portrayal, too. Black Cat needs some good portrayals, people. I'm tired of this stuff. Anyways, we're moving to Neversoft Spider-Man, okay? And this bad boy, we're finally treading up the tier list again. We finally get to go to the top. I honestly am going to put it as number 1 so far. I freaking loved this Spider-Man. There's more villains, if I'm not mistaken, than Enter Electro, and I feel like the villains are done more faithfully. They have more heroes. The cutscenes have more heroes, and the heroes are so good in them. I love at the end of the game when they're all playing poker together. I think that's super fun. It's also on brand because they also have poker nights in the Marvel Universe, if you didn't know. I think this is one of the best adaptations of Venom we're ever going to get. Spider-Man was phenomenal. Carnage and Doc Ock was pretty scary, even that's not the coolest, realest thing in canon. We've definitely seen some things like that in other universes, so that was pretty cool. All in all, this is just a banger. Neversoft did their thing with the original Spider-Man game, and Enter Electro Spider-Man 2 isn't bad. It's just this is the first game, dude. It was something else, dude. It was so freaking good. All right, the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon. The Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon is tough, okay? Why is that? It's because it adapts a lot of different things. It adapts 616 and the Ultimate Universe at the same time, and that leads to a lot of stuff just not really adding up. And even still, they just also have to have a lot of their own stuff going on in there. Like, why is Aunt May helping out so much with him becoming a superhero? Why is she, like, so about it? In the actual Ultimate Universe, she hated the notion of Spider-Man, and she was pissed when she found out he was Spider-Man. And she was pissed when he died, too. She was pissed about the whole thing, if we're going to be honest. And then in 616, you know, she wasn't like that either. She's not really having a hand or being his Alfred. That's not who Aunt May is. She's not bitched Alfred to Spider-Man as Alfred is to Batman. It's not a thing. I'm going to have to put it in C tier. MJ in the show also doesn't show up nearly enough for me. I'm actually going to move it to D tier for that alone. I'm actually going to move it below Web of Shadows. We don't like MJ Erasure. She's the #1 supporting character in comic book history. So you might want to use her if you want some extra points, in my opinion. We're moving on. Spider-Man Far From Home. Okay. As a movie, ass. Straight dog water. Trash. Bad. Basura. Spazzatura. I just did not like it. I don't like how it doesn't take place in New York. Spider-Man and New York, they go hand in hand. I'm from New York. I love this place. But on top of that, the entirety of Tom Holland's trilogy is just not very accurate, right? They don't have any of his actual supporting cast. You got Ned Leeds being Spider-Man's best friend. All right. Michelle Jones is MJ. I'm even willing to look past that and just calling her MJ. But even still, I don't think it's the best representation of her. I do like how she fights the droid at the end, the little drone. I do think that's a powerful moment for her, so I'll give her that. But overall, it just does not feel like Spider-Man. Way too heavily focused on Iron Man and Spider-Man's relationship, which actually is not a thing in the comics. If you didn't know, they don't really have a relationship like that. That's not his father like that. That's not his Uncle Ben. Uncle Ben's his Uncle Ben, and his father's dead. Iron Man ain't doing none of that for them. So I'm going to have to put Far From Home at the top of D tier right now. I'm actually putting it below Spider-Man 3. It's truly just not accurate. Oh, jeez. 90s Spider-Man, the animated series. I'm sorry, Neversoft Spider-Man. You're going to have to move over for now. Because there's a new sheriff in town. This adaptation is so peak. Now, what I love about this adaptation, we're going to talk about the good, we'll talk about the bad, and then we're going to talk about the good outweighing the bad, okay? What I love about this adaptation, Spider-Man, phenomenal. MJ is so great in it, too. This is like my first interpretation of, or my first iteration of MJ in my life, and I loved watching it. Probably what made me fall in love with her. Black Cat finally gets a good adaptation. Yeah, she's a super soldier, but other than that, she's a very good adaptation. You got a lot of great cameos from other characters. Characters like Mysterio feel good. Characters like Green Goblin and Hobgoblin feel good. Kingpin feels freaking phenomenal in this. Like, stuff like that is really good. The bad stuff, I don't like how Hobgoblin comes before Green Goblin. That doesn't really make any sense. I don't even think Sandman appears in this show. Electro is a Nazi in this show? What the hell is that about? I'm not really too sure personally, but overall, I do think this is the #1 adaptation, at least up to this point. It's just so freaking peak. And what it chooses to focus on, it does so well. I love the arcs it does. It's a great show, you know? It's a phenomenal show. It maybe I grew up on it, so I don't want to sound biased, but I've rewatched it several times in my older age as well. And I do think it's pretty damn accurate. I really do. I love the Doctor Strange stuff. Spider-Man is way more akin to Doctor Strange in the comics than he is to Tony Stark. So that's just a valid point. Stephen Strange is way more of his homie. Just truth. So, like, overall, like, I like that stuff a lot. I like him working with Blade a bit. The Lizard stuff was really cool. All of it's great. It's just, like, the Green Goblin Hobgoblin order is just a little bit weird. And, like, there's some other characters that really should have showed up that didn't show up. They even showed Big Wheel, the big wheel. Big Wheel was in this thing. Y'all, we gotta give this a good spot for that alone. When do you see Big Wheel adapted and stuff? Come on. All right, we're moving on. Is this TAS? So this is a little bit weird, right? Because this is kind of as the syndrome that the video games have. It's a big issue with the video games. The video games are supposed to be adapting the movies, and this was technically supposed to be a sequel, if I'm not mistaken, to Spider-Man 1. It was supposed to carry on. It was supposed to continue the story in case the movie didn't get picked up for a second movie. But we know it did, and everybody loves the second movie as a movie. As an adaptation, you don't have to say it's the best adaptation ever. But as a movie, probably the best Spider-Man movie on its own if we don't count, like, the other extra stuff. That's just my opinion. So with that being said, a show that's really just adapting what the movie had can't be too accurate to the comics, right? They have a lot of original villains for the most part, which I just can't say that's accurate to the comics. It's probably going to go in the last spot. I do just want to make one quick point, though, that I thought was really cool. This movie TV show extension was kind of shows that the Kingpin from the Daredevil franchise at the time that came out a little bit after this is canon in the Spider-Man universe, because it actually is Michael Clark Duncan, who plays who plays Kingpin in Daredevil. So that's really cool, especially because I love Michael Clark Duncan. He's one of my favorite actors of all time. Rest in peace, the god, the legend. So, like, I think that's super cool, and I think that's dope. But other than that, it's just not accurate, It's also super sad how it ends. Spider-Man shouldn't have such a sad ending. But anyways, Spider-Man, is that Into the Spider-Verse? Let me go down to make sure this is Into the Spider-Verse. It's definitely Into the Spider-Verse. Okay, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. As an adaptation of the comics, like the direct comics for Spider-Man, the Spider-Verse comics, this is definitely not a good adaptation, okay? It's actually pretty piss poor if I'm going to be 100% real. But those comics fucking suck. They're ass. They're trash. They're so freaking bad. And they come out with a new one of those comics like every 2 years just for everybody to hate even more than the last one. So I'm not going to expect it to be exactly related to that. I'm going to compare it to the 1610 and 616 as a whole, okay? Because Miles Morales as like a family man, like as the kid Miles Morales, like his 1610 original stories, / 616 stories, feels kind of accurate. I know his dad and his mom his dad isn't nearly as loving in his original universe, but his dad loves him in 616, and his mom loved him in both. That's pretty much a thing in Spider-Verse. They care about him above everything else, and they want nothing but the best for him. Prowler's still Aaron Davis. That's really cool. Peter B. Parker, I see as 616 Spider-Man who's married to MJ and has a child. Freaking perfect. Phenomenal. Kingpin was great. Larger than charge. MJ in this movie? Come on, melt your heart. And then Spider-Gwen, solid adaptation of Spider-Gwen. Not Gwen Stacy, just Spider-Gwen. So although it's not good for the Spider-Verse books, it's definitely a solid adaptation of the Spider-Man characters and their mythos. Gonna put it in B tier. Next up, we have the Spider-Man game, Marvel's Spider-Man. And it's impossible for me to not shoot this up to at least A tier. I'm gonna talk about it and maybe it hits S tier. Let's go. Playing as Spider-Man. Great stuff. You're fighting a lot of Spider-Man's rogues and you get a lot of good showings from them. You get Vulture. He's looking pretty cool. A little technological, but still pretty cool. You've got, who else? You got Electro. A little too technological, but still pretty cool. You got Rhino. A little technological, but still pretty cool. Doc Ock is amazingly adapted, although it's too close to being a father-son mentorship relationship. I like it better when they're not like that at all, and that's how it is in the comics. Mary Jane and Peter Parker together. You take Kingpin down to start the game. The swinging around New York City is phenomenal. It's 1-to-1 of New York City, essentially, besides some things that will refuse to be put in the game, but we can't hold that against the game. That's not their fault. I have a hard time not putting this in the bottom of A tier. As I was talking about it, the more and more I said about the villains and the more like electronically based they were, it just really started to move it down a little. Not enough to put it in B tier. It's still an A tier adaptation for sure. But like, Vulture just flies with his cool wings. And Rhino is just a big dude in a Rhino suit. And, like, Electro doesn't need voltage around him to shoot lightning. And Scorpion is just a Scorpion. He doesn't need that big mechanical shoot to be a Scorpion either. So, all in all, I gotta just say at the bottom of A tier, Peter Parker's still great. The characters are still great. Kingpin's still great. MJ, great. Aunt May.
You're gonna be okay, ma'am. I've got the cure right here.
Take off your mask. I want to see my nephew.
You knew?
I've known for a while.
I never wanted you to worry.
I did. And I am so proud of you.
Moment of silence. So it's going to go to the top of A tier once I think about Aunt May's performance, because that's the best Aunt May we're ever going to get. All right, moving on. Oh my God, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. Spectacular Spider-Man. Oh my God, you gotta move him up there above the 90s, even the one I grew up on. Yes, that's right. I do think Spectacular Spider-Man, as of now, out of everything we've talked about, is the one and only best adaptation of Spider-Man. The fact that it's only 2 seasons, heartbreaker. Or 1 season. I don't know, it's like 25 episodes total. Heartbreaking, man. This show is so good. You have Peter in high school, which I know a lot of you guys don't like, but it's pretty accurate how it's done. Gwen's around. I know MJ moves in, which is a little bit too early, but you still got the supporting cast like Liz Allen, Flash Thompson, Aunt May's there. They reference Uncle Ben, and they show you Uncle Ben's story. Venom is very well done, even though it's not accurate like the Battleworld stuff. Black Cat still feels pretty accurate in this show as well. The origin story for a lot of the characters feels really good in how the characters are portrayed, even if their origin story isn't 100% accurate, like the Lizard and Electro. Both these characters still feel immaculate, even though he's not fighting Lizard in the Everglades for the first time, and Electro is getting turned into Electro by high voltage EOs that were experimented on instead of just getting struck by lightning. So overall, it's not like everything's not one-to-one per se, but it just feels like the perfect adaptation with how they're moving with every single character. Like, just a great progression of characters. So you get to see Harry Osborn being bitter and jealous of Peter Parker, and he slowly goes down the hole as he gets to see Norman actually, like, what feels like Norman likes Peter more, even though it's not really, like, a thing. And it's not really a thing in the comics either, and it's also not really a thing in the show. He's just, like, more impressed with Peter. That doesn't mean he likes him more. Maybe he does like him more, but it's not like a father-son thing like the comics will try and tell you they are right now, or like the Sam Raimi movies try and do. It's more just like a, at best, a mentor to mentee. And even still, I don't think that really happens in 616 to a T. But still, he's like, they're still like very much around each other a lot. And I think that's very, very well done in the show. I love the Rhino. I love Doc Ock. Yeah, Tombstone is the big bad, and it was supposed to be Kingpin, but that's a rights issue. And then you got Keith David doing it for the very first episode. You know, you say, yeah, let it slide if you're me. Overall, I think it's the number one. I really do. I think Peter Parker Spider-Man is just funny enough. I think he's got the quips down perfectly.
I mean, you are celebrating Halloween in September, right? Or am I not one to talk?
I love the way he fights. In the 90s show, yeah, he fights, but he doesn't really fight. In this show, he's like moving and dodging and swinging and zipping. In the 90s show, he's just like one punch a season. That's it. So, like, there's a difference there. And just the way he be joking around, it's way better than any of the Remy stuff, just the way he be joking around. I love it. So, overall, I got to give this the number one spot as of now. I don't know if anything's even going to pass it in my eyes, but we'll see. This Spider-Man Homecoming, this is going to be right up there, just slightly above Far From Home, because it does still take place in New York City. But it's still too much about Iron Man, right? The Vulture is not nothing like the Vulture of the comics, but he's a very mechanical base, and he's not really out to just steal for himself, really quickly make a buck. He's like stealing specific kind of technology and repurposing it and then reselling it on the black market. It's a little too advanced and highbrow for the Vulture, in my opinion. I still love the performance, and I thought that Michael Keaton was phenomenal in it. Don't get me wrong. But overall, is this really Spider-Man? Again, Ned Leeds is his best friend. Why is that a thing? Why? I don't get it. Silk's in this one. That's pretty cool. I like that. Cindy Moon. But other than that, like, no Gwen. Betty Brant is like blonde. Not even in the news space. Same age Peter. It's just not for me, bro. I love these movies, but they ain't accurate. Let's be real. Miles Morales, Spider-Man, the video game. Okay, so this is, again, you got a very nice, sweet Rio. Father still cares, but father's passed on. Spider-Man's got to do his own thing. Aaron Davis is a big, like, piece in the puzzle that just won't get out of the fucking way. So I got to move. I'll put him in A tier, honestly. You even get to fight against Rhino a bit in the very beginning. This is like the only the only Spider-Man villain for Marvel Spider-Man. I think that tailors over. And then that's also a big thing in the comics, that Miles and Rhino actually have like kind of a relationship with one another. So it's pretty cool that that's a big thing, or sort of a thing, in the Miles Morales Spider-Man video game. They don't really build on that relationship, but at least you fight him, and he's the only one that carries over. Like if it was like, I know Scorpion has a relationship with them too. So like, if it was Electro, it would just be like, oh, they just chose a random character. But when it's Rhino, it's like, oh, okay, you know, Miles and Rhinos have history in the comics, so I think it's cool that they would use him for this adaptation. The big bad of the story was kind of ass and has nothing to do with Miles, though. So you're going to top of B. What is this? Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. Okay. So this one may be controversial. It's definitely not going to be above C tier for me. And here is why, okay? So I loved this show. It was a little before my time, but it still was like airing when I was a kid. You'd see it. My mom liked it, so she would put it on for us too. But it's not a thing in the comics. Like, they recently made a comic about it, and at the time I think they made like 1 or 2 comics about them, because it's not a thing in the comics. Firestar wasn't even a comic book character before the show even aired. And Iceman and Spider-Man were not homies like that. Yeah, they're cool, but they're not like Human Torch and Spider-Man are. Apparently Human Torch was supposed to be the other character in the show instead of Firestar, but they couldn't get the rights or something like that. Now that would have been A1, because they are boys in the comics. She's not even a comic character. But a lot of the other stuff in the show is pretty cool. You know, he's fighting like Shocker and Electro and like his villain. So I'm gonna give it the bottom of C tier. Spider-Man 2017. Gonna go the opposite route. I'm gonna put it at the top of. I'm gonna put it above it. I'm gonna go the opposite route. I'm putting it at the top of C tier. My reasoning why. I don't think that this show is as bad as people say it is. I don't think it's great. I think it's way better than Ultimate Spider-Man as an adaptation, and just in general, I think it's just way better. But, like, when you look at this show, okay? Uncle Ben, in my opinion, was pretty bad. I don't like how they make him too smart and they make him so sciencey based, and they make great power comes great responsibility into a math problem. I thought that was so stupid. I'm not going to lie. But, like, MJ and Peter ended up together. I thought that was very sweet. And then Peter and Miles working together. That was really cool, and that's now a thing in the comics. I know there's all these other Spider people that kind of invade the story and make Peter kind of feel like he's the newbie for some reason. It makes no sense why Peter can't get nearly as much stuff done by himself. So maybe I move it down because of that. But I'm going to leave it here because I love Spider-Man with MJ. Honestly, but Harry Osborn is also a Hobgoblin, so it's probably going to move down a bit more. Okay. What is this? What are we looking at? Spider-Man 5000. What the heck is that? Oh, this is the 1981 Spider-Man. Okay. So yeah, for those of you who don't know, they had 2 shows running concurrently in the 80s. They had Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, and then they just had a Spider-Man cartoon. I actually think this is more accurate than Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, because like I said, the Amazing Friends don't actually freaking exist. I'm going to put it at the bottom of B tier. It's just kind of a bland adaptation, though. You know, I think it's only 1 season, if I'm not mistaken. I do like the characters. I love how, like, Doc Ock is shown off in his green and yellow. He looks super good. And, like, overall, though, it just doesn't feel like they got enough done. I feel like a lot of the shows in the older days really were trying to phone it in. The 60s show really did their thing, and then everybody else who followed just weren't really trying to go by the comics. They were really starting to do their own Western thing. I've talked about a lot in this channel, where people in the West don't see the point in making an adaptation accurate. They feel like they should put their own spin on it when nobody cares about your spin. We truly do not. It's crazy. These people will literally get chosen to make a Spider-Man cartoon based on the comics, and then they will say, well, I didn't like this in the comics, so I'm not going to include it. I don't care what you like in the comics. I don't think any of us care what you like in the comics. Just make this like the comics, because that's what we like. So, overall, I wish they would do this more. I'm going to put it there for now. Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions. Okay. Where do you belong? Miguel O'Hara, not that good. Peter Parker, solid. They gave him web constructs. Spider-Man Noir, solid. They gave him all of his great scenery and everything, his own villains and everything. I mean, I guess they all got their own villains. Ultimate Spider-Man was a travesty, though. He wears the black suit, I think, for like an issue, maybe like 5 panels. No, it's a little more than that, but still. Like, I think it's 2 issues at most he's wearing the black suit. I'm not willing to give this adaptation any more than that when a quarter of the game, one of the 4 Spider-Men, is not even close to accurate. It's completely just made up just for this game to work. Now, I think if Miles Morales was a thing at the time, this game could have been shot up the peak. But, like, you got Mysterio as a big bad doing, like, multiversal shenanigans. That's not Spider-Man stuff. That's not Mysterio's game. Mysterio's game's not like that. Stop it. Come on. I'm putting it at the bottom of C. Spider-Man Unlimited. No. Why? No Way Home. Just interesting. Spider-Man Unlimited. This show, everybody, I know you guys are probably going to hate. You guys are going to give me some flack. You guys are probably going to flame. But this show, not accurate at all. It's made up as its own thing. Originally, people say it was supposed to be a Spider-Man 2099 show. And then because of Batman Beyond, they decided not to make it. That doesn't make any sense because they came out around the same time. I literally just watched a video on it yesterday by like some guy named like Mike's Media. I'll post his channel in his video if you guys want to check it out. But yeah, Spider-Man Unlimited, is not accurate at all. It's like its own thing. Venom and Carnage are homies. Green Goblin's a good guy. She-Vermin, a Herman or something, isn't a character instead of Vermin. Just not putting it above this. It's not going to happen. It's probably the worst. Not in a bad way, because it's still a solid show and it's a fun show, but it's not accurate by any means. This is the Nick Hammond show, if I'm not mistaken. The Spider-Man live-action TV show. I don't really like Jay Jonah in this show. I don't really think it does enough Spider-Man-y stuff. I don't think I can put it above the C tier. We're moving on to Across the Spider-Verse, which is similar to Into the Spider-Verse, but I will say Miguel is just not done well at all, and neither is Ben Reilly. At best, I can put it above the Nick Hammond Spider-Man live-action live-action TV show. But, like, come on, dude. Miguel is not like this. He's way too antagonistic. And I know you need an antagonist for the movie, but there's plenty of Spider-Mans in the multiverse who are antagonists. Get Spock, Spider-Man Doc Ock, Superior Spider-Man. That would have been perfect for the storyline. People would totally understand why he's so ruthless and cold. I don't really get why Miguel is so ruthless and cold. Yeah, he's a little colder than Peter Parker, but he still cares about people. You know, this is way too, like, mathematical. He doesn't have really, it feels like, any emotions, and that's not Miguel. And then you look at Ben Reilly, and he's just a big representation of, like, the 90s over buff masculine era, but that's, like, not what Ben Reilly specifically was. He's still a soft boy. He's still a Spider-Man. He still cares about people's lives. He was never the, oh, I'm macho, strong guy. That was never him in the comics. So I don't have any, I don't feel comfortable putting him above this. Jessica Drew is also nothing like that in the comics as well. I may have preferred Jessica Drew like this, but that doesn't mean she's the comics Jessica Drew. And that's just me. Spider-Man 2. Venom. Venom's bad. Kraven, also bad. Everything else, pretty solid. J. Jonah Jameson, I don't think is good, though, either. But Venom is supposed to be a huge... Okay, so Kraven's bad in the sense that he's not like how he is in the comics. He's got cancer. So like Kraven's Last Hunt is more so made like a... Not, I don't want to say fun, because I just said he has cancer. But it's played around with a bit. You know what I'm saying? It's not like Kraven's on this last hunt just because... He's on his last hunt because he's trying to find someone to kill him before cancer can kill him. I think that's roll as hell. It's just not accurate. And then when we look at Venom, that's just not accurate at all.
Thanks for coming, Pete.
Trying to start a symbiote invasion, adapted on Harry Osborn. Stop it. You're going below Web of Shadows. You're in the Web of Shadows tier. You're in the Shadow Realm, buddy.
The Shadow Realm?
The last, but most certainly not least, before we do a review of the tier list and we break down why we feel about what we feel, it's going to be Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, Spider-Man No Way Home, I think it's better than these two. It doesn't nearly focus as much on Iron Man, which is good. You have Peter's villains from another universe, which I know a lot of people don't like, but that's definitely happened in the comic books before. He's fighting universal villains. I'd be even willing to put it above probably Shattered Dimensions. I'm going to put it there for now. I'm going to talk about it, and I might move it. Doctor Strange and Spider-Man meet up. Definitely a thing like it is in the comics. Maybe it's a little too more like kid to parent, but it's still a thing in the comics, so I'm not going to hate on it. It's still pretty good. Doc Ock's done pretty well in this movie, but he's not really nearly as abhorrent as he is in the comics because of the AI thing we've talked about earlier. Green Goblin's a little bit different. Sandman's a little bit different. Electro's finally done like 616 version. They even give him his yellow flash on his face, but he's still a little too like electrical. Like he's got this like battery chest and everything. He doesn't need all that stuff. Lizard doesn't get any characterization, but I think J. Jonah Jameson. A lot of people hate J. Jonah Jameson in this movie, and they cite that he just feels like that one really abhorrent guy who just made money off of like just saying terrible stuff, and now he has to pay back billions. He's a terrible person. I think Alex Jones is his name or something like that. And people say that J. Jonah Jameson is too much like that, but I think that the early J. Jonah Jameson was definitely like that, dude. He would blame everything he could on Spider-Man without question. Like, unquestionably, this is Spider-Man's fault. Spider-Man could be on a vacation in freaking Europe, like he wasn't far from home, and he's still going to blame, like, a traffic ticket going on his car to Spider-Man, because that's just the man he is. So that's the kind of J. Jonah Jameson I don't mind seeing on the big screen. I think that's what we got. I thought that was a pretty good adaptation. Though Andrew Garfield, seeing him again was perfect. He's a perfect Spider-Man. Tom Holland really stepped up his game as a Spider-Man in this movie as well. And then and then Tobey Maguire in there as well. You get the three Spider-Man. You know, they don't point to each other, but you know that's a thing obviously in the mythos. People really always talk about that. I'm comfortable putting it at the bottom of C and keeping the other Tom Holland movies in the bottom of D. Okay? Okay, so this is the current list. This is the list we've got, and I think I'm going to settle on everybody. We have Spectacular. The top 5 is a very good top 5. I love our top 5. Spectacular, 90s, Neversoft, Ultimate Spider-Man, 67 Spider-Man. Honestly, I think that's like the perfect top 5. Right underneath it, you have other great characters, other great adaptations with the Spider-Man, Marvel Spider-Man. You have Spider-Man of Time, and you have Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man 1, peak. Then you move to Miles Morales Spider-Man for Marvel Spider-Man. Enter Electro Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man Mysterio Menace, Spider-Man 2. This is Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and then the other 80s Spider-Man show. I'm okay with all this. Maybe I moved the 80s Spider-Man show down a little bit, but I think it's fine where it is. Andrew Garfield Spider-Man 1, Andrew Garfield Spider-Man 2. I think the Green Goblin really is what solidifies the second one being less accurate, but the suit's better. So I'm going to put it above here. I'm going to put it there. I'm sorry. Across the Spider-Verse is fair here. That's good. Good. I honestly want to move this down, but I don't think Mysterio and Symbiote Spider-Man are enough to make me move it down. 2017 show. I like where it is. Web of Shadows, Spider-Man 2. You could have been so amazing, but you weren't. Ultimate Spider-Man, Spider-Man Friend or Foe, Spider-Man 3, Spider-Man Homecoming, Far From Home, TNAS, and Unlimited. That's our list, people. I'm pretty comfortable with it. I like looking at it. I'm very happy with it. I think it came out great. I'm not going to complain at all. If you guys have any complaints, I wouldn't be surprised, though, because I just made a tier list probably flaming a lot of the stuff you guys like. If you do want to get your feelings heard and get your word out amongst the universe, you should probably leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. Let me know exactly where I went wrong. And on that Spider-Man 2 front, if you really think that I'm mistaken in reading Doc Ock's character wrong, let's go round for round with it. Give me some timestamps. We can talk about it. I might even make a video out of it. And not even like trying to flame you, just like trying to understand other people's point of views. It could be cool. It could be fun. I love doing cool and fun stuff. Overall, I love this video. I had a lot of fun doing it. I hope you guys had a lot of fun watching it. You should totally check out the Patreon I started if you want some extra exclusive stuff. There's a literal hour-long video breaking down Silk up there. I have another video up there coming soon. It's about, like, who would win in a fight, Spider-Man versus... I'm going to not say because I don't want to spoil it, but I'll just say it because I love you guys so much. Spider-Man versus Superman. How many Spider-Man would it take to beat Superman? Yeah, that's the next video. I'm putting it on my Patreon. So if you want to see that, make sure you subscribe to the Patreon. You can watch all my videos without ads. You get exclusive ways to vote on future videos you want to see me make. And if you want to do recommend me a video, go for it. Because if you're subscribed to the Patreon, I'm way more willing to do recommendations. And if you subscribe to the Patreon, I'm always going to listen and answer you. You got a special spot in my Discord. You could always message me. DM me on Twitter. I can put my Twitter on the screen. Bam, right there. And the Discord link will be in the caption below. Overall, I'm very grateful. If you guys stayed this long in the video, honestly, you must really love me. I really appreciate you. Dunk loves you too. Trust me, I promise. Thank you guys so much. I'll catch y'all on the flip side. Dunk out.